Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for the second half of panels we have scheduled for our Men's Health Summit. Earlier today, we had panels on multiple myeloma and on clinical trials. I encourage you to go back and watch those programs. They were fantastic, especially some of the personal stories that we had. So I'm not going to tell you all about it, but I need you to go back and watch those panels. They are great. Now it's time to get real. It's time to get serious. Let's talk about Black men and sexual health. Black men have always had a curious relationship when it comes to healthy sexual performance. Some of it is psychological due to our history of enslavement. Some of it is psychosocial due to our diet, activity levels, and conditions we believe that might be unrelated to our sexual health. And some of our sexual health is tied directly to the organ itself. So we've got a panel of experts who are going to talk about all of these factors and more as we try to put the puzzle together to provide a clear picture of sexual health. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have Dr. Finwa Millhouse. She is a urologist, well-known. She's a TikTok star. She's a wonderful urologist who's going to come in and talk about really all of the conditions that are impacting the male organ and what are those things that can impact our sexual health as it comes to the male sex organ. We also have Dr. Jeff Menzies. He is a PhD, and he is a proud graduate of two of our finest HBCUs, receiving his bachelor's and master's degree from Fisk University in psychology and clinical psychology, respectively. He finished up his academic training at Howard University, majoring in clinical psychology with a minor in developmental psychology. Along with his PhD, Dr. Menzies earned a graduate certificate in international studies with a concentration in political science and information and culture. A native of Cincinnati, Ohio, he maintains his professional and social ties to his hometown by serving as a consultant to several grassroots organizations, educators, and senior administrators. We also have Dr. Eric Griggs, who's not here quite yet. He's probably caught up in clinic. I know how Tuesdays are. Sometimes the doctors could get caught up. But when he joins us, we'll have him on, and that's Dr. Eric Griggs. He is a New Orleans-based community medicine doctor and health educator who has dedicated his professional lives to raising health and wellness awareness in communities nationally and internationally. In addition to being recently appointed as an adjunct professor at the Tulane School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine, he also served in the same capacity at the LSU School of Medicine and the Xavier University College of Pharmacy. Dr. Griggs proudly serves as the founder and executive director of the Doc Griggs Foundation, a community-driven, student-activated, and professionally mentored organization that promotes community health and empowering the community to get checked, get fit, and get moving. I want to welcome each of you to the program.
Hello.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Millhouse, as a urologist, what are some of the initial red flags for you when a patient comes in and is complaining of poor sexual functioning?
Yeah, so first and foremost, sometimes getting these complaints out is a little difficult. Even me as a urologist, and this is what we do. I find some patients understandably are nervous and ashamed, or they feel embarrassed potentially. And so they'll kind of beat around the bush. But it's important, I think, for our audience to remember that, we as providers, as physicians are here to help. I think it's best to have your complaints written out and prioritized before you go see your clinician, and practice saying it here, if you will. But some red flags that I will hear are it's difficult to achieve an erection, or it's difficult to maintain the erection. So the erection can be achieved, but maintaining it is difficult. And this is known as erectile dysfunction, which is one of the most common complaints, sexual complaints, second to probably premature ejaculation. And with erectile dysfunction, it's not only just about, what's happening in the bedroom, but with erectile dysfunction, because it's about blood flow, it can be a precursor symptom or sign of heart disease. So even though I'm a urologist and my area is the waist below, when I am seeing men who are complaining about this, I'm also thinking about their heart and what risk factors they have for heart disease, what is their health condition currently, do they see a doctor? That's a big thing. Do you even see a doctor? And if you don't, you need to. And so this is where the conversation usually starts.
Dr. Jeff, I think a lot of times these type of situations, especially when we're talking about like ED, which is erectile dysfunction, or PE, which is premature ejaculation, that can have a weigh heavily on a man's mental well-being. And as Dr. Bellhouse kind of alluded to, it's hard even to get them to admit that they're having an issue. What role does that play in terms of kind of exacerbating the issue? Because now you're stressing out about it, you're a little bit embarrassed by it, you're not talking about it, and then it could kind of build upon itself and make that condition even worse, so to speak.
Yeah, and so performance anxiety is what we call it.
Okay.
People have performance anxiety when it comes to sports, when it comes to taking tests, when it comes to dance competitions, but also when it comes to the bedroom. And especially if they've had a quote unquote failure at some previous point in time, or if they have an already tense interaction with their significant other, every time they start to become intimate, it can trigger their anxiety. And so, so that's one way that psychology plays into it. But on the other end of it is, if they are having erectile dysfunction, if they are having premature ejaculation, which is, I define premature ejaculation if you ejaculate sooner than you want it to, so it's just it's not a set amount of time. It's when it happened before you want it to. And then it also, then you can also add on to that definition that if your partner is not satisfied, so it's so many factors in it. But if a person is suffering from ED and PE, it can really weigh down on their overall quality of life, because so many people equate their sexual ability and their sexual prowess with their manhood. And so, in many cultures, indigenous cultures, they celebrate manhood around virility. And so if you are from one of those cultures, or if you just innately have it within you, then your whole world can be rocked by poor performance in the bedroom. But there are many factors that contribute to it. And I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit later.
Absolutely. So, Dr. Millhouse, you mentioned heart health as being kind of connected to some of those conditions that are impacting our sexual health. Are there any other conditions besides our heart health that can impact our ability to function, healthily in the sexual sense?
Well, yes, my colleague here alluded to performance anxiety. So within ED, or erectile dysfunction, there's psychogenic erectile dysfunction, which is basically that there's not an organic blood flow problem, but like our brain, our mind, our emotions, or whatever, our psychological well-being psychosocial well-being is getting in the way. And certainly things like depression and anxiety, PTSD, relationship issues, I mean, if you aren't connecting with the person that you are trying to be intimate with, that can really can actually manifest as erectile dysfunction. So not all erectile dysfunction is like points to heart. There are definitely psychosocial factors. Other less common factors, there's neurogenic factors. So spinal cord injury patients may have a healthy heart, but they can't get an erection, because not only do erections are with blood flow, but the cascade that leads to blood into the penis is gone through nerves and through our nervous system and nerve pathway, starting with a stimuli, whether it's a sight or a smell or a touch or something or a thought that excites us, and then that gets the nerve pathway going that eventually ends in blood into the penis. And so neurologic injuries can affect erections as well. The other thing that can happen is something called prostate cancer and prostate cancer surgery or treatment. So prostate cancer, which is pervasive, and we know that is more pervasive in African American or Black men. can lead to erectile dysfunction, not the cancer itself, but the treatment for prostate cancer, unfortunately. So when we do a surgery to radically remove the prostate, there are microscopic nerves around the area that are important for getting an erection. And that can lead to persistent erectile dysfunction in patients who've had prostate cancer treatment. Not a reason not to go get your prostate checked, men. Okay. Okay. There are things we can do to help. So we're here for you. We know this and understand this in urology. But even if you don't get prostate cancer surgery, something like prostate radiation still has a potential risk for contributing or leading to erectile dysfunction.
It's funny. Like I was talking to a good friend of mine recently, and he was talking about he just celebrated this month his like 6th year of beating prostate cancer, right? And so he had it early in his 40s. He had his prostate removed, and he talked about, I didn't get an erection for 6 months afterwards. And he said it was really impacted. He's married. He's been married for a long time. Like, and it really impacted his self-esteem. And then when he got it, he was so excited. He was like, "Hey," he just kind of grabbed his wife. She's like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Yes, I got one. Let's go." Got a situation. But Dr. Jeff, I can't really, when you think about all that goes to being a Black man, in this country, like we were talking about it before the show, all of the different layers, in particularly our enslavement and how Black men were viewed as more or less bucks per se, and our sexual virility became part of that, our value, right? And that value has kind of seeped into maybe our conscious or unconscious mind, to where say being sexually viable or virile is part of our self-esteem. How do we separate that in a way that's healthy, but still say, hey, I want to be able to please my partner. I want to be able to perform adequately, but not have my self-esteem built upon the fact that I'm this virile, man.
Right. And so I think that it's a natural and a healthy thing to have a portion of your self-esteem attached to your sexual performance.
Okay.
But the totality of it, absolutely not. So being a well-rounded person, right? Being a person that's accomplished in many other areas of life will kind of help to buffer that. I mean, but the reality of it is that it's gonna have an effect on the man's self-esteem to not be able to get an erection. And I think that coming to terms with that part of it will allow us to better address it when it does impact the man's self-esteem, because I really don't think that psychologically there's any way around that impacting our self-esteem. And it's the reason why, relationships, they go south. If erectile dysfunction is a part of the relationship, and if the woman, the female partner is sexually interested and sexually active and desires to be so, it can really wreak havoc on the relationship. And if I can, I just want to double back a little bit on what my good doctor colleague, Sister Nigeria, said earlier, is that, when you're talking about relationships and some of the psychological impact, right? Sometimes, like when I'm coaching couples, I coach couples a lot. And if erectile dysfunction becomes a part of the conversation, and I kind of jokingly but kind of seriously say, well, it might not be that you cannot get an erection. It might just be that you can't get one in this relationship anymore. And so, and it's just kind of and it's pretty, I say it kind of jokingly, but it's a very deep statement to make to a couple. And because I'm not encouraging the man to go see, but I'm just trying to help them to understand that this may not be organic, and it might be the energetic dynamic in your relationship that's contributing to this. It can be that, the intimacy has become stale. It's become so robotic that there's no more arousal there. So I say, do you get erections at all? If you're just sitting somewhere, something crosses your mind, if you, turn on a certain website or a certain movie, do things move for you? And if they say yes, then I said, you don't necessarily have ED on an organic level. It's going to be a psychological thing at this point. And that's good because we can work with that.
That's a great point, Dr. Jeff. During the history process, trying to decipher what are the possible factors is we ask about morning erections, for instance. Do you get morning erections? Do you get an erection with self-stimulation or masturbation? have you gotten normal erections with other partners, and those things that can help put into perspective, okay, this is, more points to psychogenic erectile dysfunction versus organic erectile dysfunction.
Now, and when I was preparing for this panel, some men are reporting that there's an expectation that sexual functioning declines with age. First of all, is that true? And is that something that we should be expecting? And if it is, about when should we start to expect that sexual functioning is going to decline?
So number one myth is that young men don't have any of these issues, and that is false. I definitely see men as early as their early 20s, and there's probably younger men, but I only see patients 18 and up, basically. But I see men in their 20s who have erectile dysfunction. Up to about 10, if we think about every decade, so like in your 20s, maybe around 10 to 20% of individuals suffer from erectile dysfunction issues. Then in your 30s, up to 30%, your 40s, up to 40%. So every decade, add on a 10% increase potentially. So that means men in their 50s and up are half or more have some spectrum or, of erectile dysfunction, whether it's difficulty achieving or maintaining. Yes, age increases the arousal threshold. Okay, so what got you aroused when you were 21 doesn't automatically get you aroused when you are 41, 51, 61.
Right. That breeze hit the back of your neck.
It could be a breeze.
Exactly. So it takes more, which points to, again, you might need more stimuli in a dollar still relationship type of thing, but it takes more. The other thing is that, it's erections are less firm as men get older, and last shorter. And the refractory period, period from ejaculation to, okay, I can go back and try get another erection again, is longer.
Yeah, I was about to ask you to explain what refractory period is.
Yes. When you're 20 or 18,
part of it is also how you treat yourself as a man. Your physical health, your psychological well-being, because it doesn't necessarily have to happen with age. Your body has wear and tear and all those things. But what I'm finding is that younger men are beginning to take sexual stimulating drugs now. Like those, I call them the gas station pills, or these honeys and all these different things to try to enhance their erection. Even if they don't have a problem with getting to maintaining an erection, they want to take it to that other level. And so what happens is that you can't show up on 10 today and then show up normal tomorrow, so they have to keep taking these things and taking them. And unfortunately, they do a lot of these drugs, especially the gas station drugs, will do damage to your liver and damage to your kidneys. And then you will become dependent on these drugs just to get a quote unquote normal erection. And so a lot of younger men are starting to go this route to try to impress and perform like a superstar. And then they end up damaging their natural ability to perform. And just really quick, in traditional Chinese medicine, your sexual virility is tied directly into your kidney health. And so a lot of these drugs are actually damaging our kidneys. It's the urogenital system. So they understood that you just like you have your two kidneys, those are like your testicles on a higher level. And then they also tie it into your brain, the two hemispheres of your brain. And so it's a complete system. So over intellectualizing can sometimes impact sexual performance, just like over sexual stimulation can impact cognitive performance. And they're all tied into that kidney meridian. So we've got to be very, very careful how we are attempting to perform and to go as natural of a route as possible, especially when you're young and you don't need these things. Learn about healthy foods that help to improve and stabilize circulation so that you're not worried about circulatory issues later in life. Pay attention to, the contraction of STDs and how those may impact your sexual performance later in life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so amazed that in 2022, so many people are advocating for non-safe sex. Sex without some type of barrier. In this hookup culture where they're like strangers, just you'll swipe. I don't know which way they swipe to mean that they like it because I don't do that stuff, but whichever way I swipe to say I like you.
Right. Swipe right.
Is it right? Okay, thanks, Doc. I don't know. I'm not in the game anymore.
I ain't doing that either. But
Right. So you heard. So you heard. So you swipe right, and then all of a sudden we're having sex tonight unprotected.
Right.
Yeah,
that's dangerous. It's risky. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one thing that you said that I think we should just briefly mention, because I'm starting to see this. Not only, you said the gas station pills and like trying to be superstars, but one thing, and I want to start the caveat, I'm very sexually liberal, but within the means of safe sex. Okay.
Right.
But one thing is the access of porn, especially in our young men. I mean, you can go on porn, you can get porn right now. You can get on your phone, you can get it anywhere. And so porn is like sex on steroids, okay? And so you're getting these visuals and these ideas about sex, especially if you haven't really engaged in sex in real life and really have not had those experiences yet. It can create these unrealistic, if you will, thoughts or ideas or arousal thresholds, that then when you get into the actual bedroom with a partner, that doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And I've seen a few young men with this, and they'll say, and I'll ask them about their porn usage, and it's, very, very, very regular. And then these are very young men who are, maybe have had a few sexual experiences outside of masturbation, but have potentially caused erectile dysfunction indirectly, because it takes so much to get aroused, because what they know is like what they see in porn.
Right.
That's one thing to be careful with a bit.
Yeah, that was my next question. So Dr. Jeff, can you expand on really the mental aspect of looking at porn, or even like the culture of swiping right, sexting, all of these things that the younger generation are now involved in, that weren't happening in the 70s and 80s as much, because back then you had to get porn on video, or you had to go to the movie theater to see it. Now it's like it's a website, right? And it's something that can be accessible on their phone. So you've got much more sexually charged information available to younger and younger men, and they're getting almost a distorted view of what sex is, right? And how that interaction is with a partner, and that could impact their sexual functioning. So could you talk a little bit more about how that impacts the brain, and how that could impact our overall functioning healthily?
Absolutely, yeah. And so for the inexperienced person, the younger person, watching porn, it does set a certain expectation of what sex should, or even what good sex looks and sounds like, right? How it's performed. And so it can set an expectation, and then when they walk out to the real world and have their sexual encounter, and they see that it doesn't go like that, then they can begin to second guess whether it's their own performance was lacking because she didn't sound like the woman in the video, or, is it something wrong with her? And then they might, dismiss a otherwise healthy and good relationship potential to continue to seek out people who match the imagery from pornography, right? But the other thing is that also, not only does it set an expectation, but it can also create a certain taste and a certain desire, right? It's Dr. Amos Wilson talks a lot about how our desires are created for us, by marketing. And so we're told what we like. We're told what we're desiring. And many of us, if we're not careful, we actually buy into it and think that this is my desire, when in reality, I only like this particular drink because that commercial, I saw it 50 million times, and that's what my mother drank. And so we have to be very careful about the taste and the desires that are created by pornography. And it creates a certain sexual appetite. As an adult who has had, sexual experiences, we could typically discern between, that's faking or that's a movie, and know that we're not going to necessarily get that and say, hey, honey, you want to try that? Wink, wink. And then, you might try it, but you don't necessarily expect it to always be like that, right? And so for the youth, that's where they're a lot more susceptible, because they're inexperienced and they haven't had a chance to really develop their natural tastes and desire and explore their natural appetite. And so these things can replace their true realistic desires and expectations with these fantastical porn-based imageries and performances.
Oh yeah,
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I got a 14-year-old in my house, so I got to make sure that he's functioning, because now he's starting to hit that developmental period in his life where that gets that surge of testosterone. You start looking at, other, people sexually, you start getting those feelings, and you don't want to have it to where, like, whether it's on TikTok or one of these sites where you start getting it's almost hypersexualized, right? And so you start to, you don't want them to get this kind of distorted view of how those relationships go and those relations go by just, what's on social media. And then you can keep going down that rabbit hole. You go from, some girls dancing on TikTok to pornography, and that's it's like a slippery slope. So I want to kind of make sure he sees and understands what a healthy sexual relationship is like. Dr. Milhouse, you touched on the prostate earlier. Help people kind of let's get kind of deeper into that conversation. Help our audience understand what the prostate is and does, and then why is such a loaded question. I don't like to ask why because it's hard. It's just you can't tease it out. But help our audience understand the impact that prostate cancer has on Black men specifically, in this country.
Sure. So the prostate is an organ that helps sperm survive and fertilize. So it secretes, and the prostate is an organ that's maybe the size of a walnut that is located behind the bladder, in front of the rectum, and it secretes about a third of what is in the ejaculate. So the ejaculate or semen has like less than 5% of actual sperm in it. And it has almost 2/3 of something called seminal fluid from the seminal vesicles, which are glands that are next to the prostate. And you can think of the seminal vesicles as providing like the sugar, the food for the sperm, to make it to the long voyage to the egg. And then the prostate secretes fluid, prostatic fluid that's acidic and has these enzymes that help to achieve fertilization, that help to break down the layer of the ovum. And so that's the importance of the prostate for male fertility. The prostate is one of the only organs in a man, or the only organ really, that continues to grow till you die. So, our feet don't grow, our height doesn't grow, the penis doesn't grow, things don't grow on us. In fact, some things shrivel as we get older, but the prostate does not. It grows. Okay. Now, prostate cancer isn't just like benign growth. Prostate cancer is abnormal replication of cancer cells. And so abnormal cell growth that is not just size growth. We're talking cell growth, and it can ferment to cancer. Prostate cancer affects approximately 1 in 8, 1 in 9 men. For reasons that we have not completely elucidated, Black men are about 2 times higher risk of having prostate cancer, and 2 times higher risk of dying from prostate cancer. We used to focus a lot on biology factors, like, it must be some, biologic things. Now we realize the impact more and more on the environment, on, social determinants of health, on kind of the non-biological factors that probably play a significant role even in development and prostate cancer prognosis. One, for instance, alarming statistic is that even in low risk prostate cancer patients, these are the early stage ones that are very, very likely treatable and curable. Black men are less likely to be offered definitive treatment. You see what I'm saying? I mean, yeah. And, one would think it'd be the opposite. If you know that this population is at high risk of death and you have this low, you would be more aggressive in that population, not less, So in any case, the prostate is important. I think it's very important the audience understands that, that in the advent of screening, we've been screening men since I think the 90s. that prostate cancer death overall has declined significantly. Okay. And so it's an individual thing, and there's not one size fits all. Somebody might be screened and recommended to do a treatment like surgery. Somebody might be screened and recommended to do radiation. Somebody might be screened. And in few cases, especially if you have medical problems and you're older, we may just watch you. So there's, it's not always like a hammer to a nail where if you got cancer, we got to take it out. But we do know that our prostate cancer treatments do increase the risk of erectile dysfunction, getting back to our sexual health topic. And it's the disruption of some important nerves around the prostate that really is the culprit there of why that leads to it. Now, it's not that every single man who gets prostate cancer treatment is doomed to never get an erection again. Like you said, your friend was able to eventually get an erection. I will say initially, most men cannot get an erection after prostate cancer surgery. A decent number of them will regain ability to do that with or without medications. And then some of these men will need something more than medications to help them get an erection. The best risk, the best thing you can do is be at your best health before you go into that. So, if you're uncontrolled diabetic, you smoke, and then you add on prostate cancer surgery, you're set up for having issues with erections versus if you're healthy, you don't have any medical problems, you go to the doctor every year, you exercise 4 times a week, you try to eat a well-balanced meal. You see what I'm saying? Your blood pressure control, then you're at a better starting lineup if you have to get prostate cancer treatment.
And one other thing about the prostate really quick is that it's a tool for ejaculation. It's actually, it's the contractions that help to propel, the ejaculation. And sometimes that's an indication of having prostate issues, the force of your ejaculation. So if it just kind of dribbles out, if it kind of just drops out as opposed to being expelled out, that can be an indication that you have a prostate issue as well.
Yeah, so there's multiple things involved in ejaculation. The testicles that provide the sperm, and then pelvic floor muscles. So your pelvic floor muscles kind of contract and propel it out. And so if you have a decline in ejaculate volume, there's multiple factors that could be involved. One of them is pelvic floor muscle weakness,
So,
or like some.
So not talking about.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so not talking about the volume of it, just the actual ejaculating of it, not necessarily the volume.
Sure.
Wow, this is great stuff, and we've got a great comment from a kid, which is saying, "Thank you for saying that." Oftentimes, they blame the patient for not going to the doctor early. Some doctors do not have our brother's best interests. It's important to find a doctor that is best for you, and I do agree with that because it is one of the preventable, it's one of the most treatable cancers that are out there, and that's prostate cancer. And so, if we're still having healthcare disparities, there has to be a breakdown somewhere, and it could be the breakdown. And I'm sure there's enough breakdown on both sides. There's that on both sides kind of comment that happens, but if we have. To your point, Dr.
It's more on our side, I would say, like our mean medical side.
Yeah. Right. I did my master's thesis on cultural mistrust. There's a brother named Dr. Francis Terrell out of the University of North Texas. He developed the cultural mistrust scale, and it's dealing with how African descendants mistrust or distrust, the establishment, in various aspects of it, and the medical establishment is right at the top of that. At that list. And there's a long, deep history that was outlined by Sister Harriet Washington, in her book of Medical Apartheid. Dr. Joy DeGroot, her book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And so we're dealing with this collective trauma that's born out of mistreatment and injustice, at the hand of those who are sworn to protect and serve when we're talking about law enforcement, and in the hands of those who are supposed to do no harm when it comes to the medical field. And we know about the medical experimentation that takes place, not just the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, but Johns Hopkins got a slap on the hand, for knowingly allowing pregnant women to reside in residences that have high lead, environmental lead. and they were studying how the exposure to lead would impact the fetus, the developing fetus. You know, so we've got all of these highbrow institutions.
Did he
I
lock
think
up?
we lost him. I'm like, is it?
And he was on a roll too. He was giving it. He was
On a
giving it.
roll.
Okay.
But we got his point.
Oh,
Yes.
he's back. Yeah, he's back. Oh,
That book, Medical Apartheid, is profound. Yeah.
yeah, I think, and yeah, he was talking about different things that have happened.
Yes.
And just to kind of help our audience understand, there's a difference between, he dropped that. There's a difference between mistrust and distrust. And what we're talking about, distrust is based on fact, right? It's something that's actually happened. And so there is a real distrust that and it's not made up, right? It actually happened to us, and we can go through the long history of it. And so so to your point, in terms of medicine has to recognize that, and they have to just say, and they can't just come with the attitude, well, you got to get over it kind of situation. No, what we need to do is really, that's got to be part of the care.
Correct.
That's got to be part of the understanding of the Black experience when it comes to healthcare. And so if I'm a Black man and I walk into my healthcare provider, and now I have an elevated PSA, which is a prostate specific antigen, which is found by a blood test, and it's elevated, and they should understand that, statistically speaking, I'm more likely to have prostate cancer because I have a family history of prostate cancer. I'm more likely to have it, and then the statistics about Black men dying, that care should be elevated, not lowered as a result. And what I think what we're finding, and what Dr. Jeff is speaking to, is it's going the opposite way in terms of being lowered versus elevated, and that's disturbing. That's a challenge.
Yeah, very disturbing. Yeah.
So
medicine is slow. We're acknowledging this, and so one of the things that's important that all doctors is that you can't begin to educate a patient if you can't relate to the patient. Being a physician is just not what I know in my brain. It's about how I communicate human to human. So.
Right. So, we talked about this earlier, but I want to give our audience some hope. And what are some of those foods that we can eat? And I think we see Dr. Jeff back. What are some foods that we can eat that could help kind of that circulation happen, that are shown to improve our sexual health? I know, I saw one video. There's a sister, she does a whole bunch of videos on TikTok, and she talks about like watermelon and other foods that can help. So what are some of those foods that we can eat that kind of improve our sexual functioning?
I mean, antioxidants, foods that are fruits that are rich in antioxidants, berries, and other fruits and vegetables, green leafy vegetables. We want to minimize our animal protein intake. The safer animal proteins are found in like the eggs and fish, over the poultry and the meats. But a high vegetable, high berries, high fruit diet can help potentially with circulation.
Looking at herbs and spices as well play a major part in circulation, like cayenne peppers, the spicy food. So if you think about the spicy foods like peppers, ginger, onions, garlic, those are the things that in indigenous cultures they would use those to help with circulation issues, or not even circulation issues, but to enhance and improve and sustain healthy circulation. When we start looking at the different herbs and spices, I'm a naturopath. So I deal with like holistic health and a holistic approach to at least preventing ailments. And so you can look throughout traditional Chinese medicine. They have various, very natural and gentle ways of achieving and maintaining erection. There's not such a jolt to the kidneys and the liver like, some of the pharmaceuticals would be. So there are many things that you can do. You can add certain things to your daily meal, your smoothies, to keep your heart health together, to keep diabetes, regulated, as well as prevent diabetes from ever setting in. And of course, exercise. There's actually there's a mode of exercise called iron crotch qigong. That comes out of the Far East Asian cultures, to where you literally do certain exercises to train and strengthen, your sexual organs and your reproductive health. I mean, some people go as far as to literally holding weights on there. I don't advise this at all, but people have done this where they hold weights and then they tighten those, like you were saying, those pelvic muscle floors to actually be able to swing the weights, and so they're strengthening all the way around, to the point to where they gain and maintain, serious erections and can perform very, very well through natural means.
I don't recommend that.
I don't either. I don't either, but it does happen. It happens and it works.
I think that might be a mental thing to say, hey, if you believe it's going to work, and it works, right? Go for it. But yeah, I think it's important to recognize, and so there's that theme, right? So when we do a lot of these programs, we talk about cancers, we talk about high blood pressure, we talk about a variety of illnesses. And the best way to prevent it is eating that healthy diet, right? The number one thing is eating a healthy, more plant-based diet than not, right? We've got to eliminate the sugars and the salt and the preservatives and all of these kind of fatty foods, lower our meat intake, and those green leafy vegetables. And they say, if it rots, it's good, right, for you. If it's going to rot after a time, eat the rainbow, all of these different cliches that we talk about, and we use them as cliches, but they really are serious. And in terms of our overall functioning, we can stabilize our blood sugars. We can lower our blood pressure by just eating the right foods. Food is medicine is a cliche, but it's really, really real. And I think both of you are alluding to that, is saying, hey, look, there are a lot of foods out there, anti-inflammatory, that has anti-inflammatory, antioxidants, all of these different things. And it's just in the food that we eat. And sometimes the food that we eat is what's making us sick. Right. And so it works in the other way too. We start grabbing salt before we taste the food. Guess what's going to happen? Our blood pressure is going to go up, and all of those different things. And so, and I know there were some bad habits that I had, right? I watched my mother and grandmother cook with that coffee cup full of bacon drippings, right? On the, you know what I'm saying? And so it was just, oh, you put bacon dripping in everything, right? You scoop a little bacon dripping, drop it in there, and that was just, and then when you got done cooking bacon, pour off the drippings, and that was for the flavor. But over time, you realize that's raising the soul. It's doing so much damage inside your body,
right?
That you've got to cut that out, right? And then we've got to figure out what are some ways that we can still have the richness of flavor. We can still have the depth of flavor. We can still enjoy the food that we like, the way we want to enjoy it, but in a way that's more healthy for ourselves, for our long-term health. So I just got on my soapbox. I'm getting off of it now.
Go ahead. That moving our body.
I'm gonna have to slide out, and I apologize, but I just want to thank you all for the opportunity. And Dr. Millhouse, it's a pleasure to meet you, sister. Brother Ellis, it's a pleasure to meet you as well. I look forward to future conversations.
Absolutely, Dr. Jeff. I'm gonna keep your information because we'd love to have you back or on another program. You've been a great contributor, and we want you part of the BDO family. And so, thank you again for contributing to this conversation. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Take care, brother.
All right, take care, y'all.
Okay, Dr. Mills, you were saying?
Oh, I was saying, yeah, absolutely. Food is medicine, and you move your body. We have to move our bodies, okay? Moving our bodies, it boosts, and men, it can boost natural testosterone, lift resistance training, adding some weights, increasing that blood circulating through your heart. So, a big proponent of like just healthy living and starting there. And then, yes, I'm a doctor. I prescribe meds. I do procedures that help people, but I really like to advocate for conservative therapies and natural ways to like change and increase your health.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Griggs made it.
Yeah.
How are you doing this evening, Dr. Griggs?
Fashionably late.
Fashionably, yeah, I know we're finishing up. That's the difference between Central Time and Eastern Time. I thought I was actually on time at 5:45. I was going to be there and be ready for Ellis and Dr. Fenwa. And yeah, that's what happens when you don't get enough sleep, or could happen if you have sleep apnea. So guys, get your necks checked, check your breathing. It puts you at risk for all kinds of things. I'm so sorry.
No worries. And you're making a point, because we talked about earlier, but I want you to kind of speak on it. What are those conditions like that we wouldn't expect, like sleep apnea, having an impact on our sexual health and sexual functioning?
So here's the crazy thing. The sleep apnea can cause, waking up is a stressful event. Sleep apnea causes you to wake up several times during the middle of the night. It's an obstruction. Obstructive sleep apnea is an obstruction of your airway. Your CO2 levels rise, your oxygen levels go low, so your body wakes you up and you don't even realize it. As a consequence of that, it raises what's called your stress hormones, cortisol and epinephrine. Cortisol can lead to diabetes because it raises your blood sugar. Excess epinephrine can lead to hypertension, both of which can kill your number one fan, or your number one thing that you're a fan of as a man. You're a soldier. It can affect your performance. Hypertension can cause you to blow out the small blood vessels that allow you to perform. Diabetes can damage the inside of those blood vessels and impede the flow, which means that you will not be able to perform. Then after that first time you get inside your own head and you start putting more stress on yourself, your cortisol and epinephrine levels go up, and it just turns into this self-perpetuating cycle that can be bad. All because you played sports, didn't get your neck measured, was snoring, unfortunately might have lived by yourself, or if you did live with someone, thought they were just complaining about you sleeping and snoring like a lawnmower and putting you out of the bedroom. So that's another way. Snoring that's the worst kind of foreplay. If you sound like a lawnmower, Fred Flintstone, about to knock the house down, that's not an attractant. I'll say that.
It ain't cute. Yeah. The other thing I want to add with sleep apnea, it's not about sex, but we see this a lot in urology, is it makes you pee more at night. You actually produce more urine. Untreated sleep apnea makes you produce more urine at night. And so patients who come in complaining that they get pee all the time at night, I'm steady ask them, well, what about your sleep? Do you snore? Do you have sleep apnea? And I've seen profound improvement in patients who have sleep apnea that pee frequently at night, that then get their sleep apnea treated, and then they're not waking up nearly as much or at all.
Yeah. So in the lay terms, what happens is, as you wake up in the morning, your body thinks it's okay, it's time to get up and start the day. Let's unload all the byproducts of the night. If you're waking up constantly in the middle of the night, your body just steadily unloading. So that can end up being a problem.
Right.
I'm trying to make up the lost time by crowding it all in.
No. This is great. This is great. This is fantastic. And I think people need to recognize that there is a connection to other, conditions that we wouldn't consider. I wouldn't connect sleep apnea to sexual performance, but there is a direct line through all of those things that you just laid out so eloquently, Dr. Griggs. Are there any other, so we talked about like diabetes and hypertension. Are there any other conditions like a sleep apnea that that we should be doing, or is there some behaviors? Like, what are the behaviors like that we talked about foods, but are there other behaviors that we need to kind of curtail in order to improve our sexual health and sexual function?
So there's three things that, and they're kind of redundant because we kind of talked about them before. Mentally, you need to be in the right state of mind. You need to be, of course, eating the right foods, but anything that affects your circulation can affect your sexual performance. Sleep apnea can cause you to have hypertension and or diabetes. Eating too much, not taking care of yourself, anything that increases your stress level, your mental health. The first three letters of mental health are MEN, and men tend to forget that. And mental health is different than mental illness. Now, if you want to connect that mental health and say sexual health in the same sentence, you'll get a lot of guys' attention and make them be more cognizant of their blood pressures, of their sleeping habits and sleep hygiene, of how much they eat and their sugar levels, and their conversation. Again, mentally having a conversation with your healthcare provider and not being afraid to just be vulnerable.
Right. So, and also, if you're smoking, stop. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the minimum. If you're smoking, try to stop.
You're narrowing the blood vessels that you need to perform. You're blocking up the blood vessels that you need. You need as much blood down that pipeline to get your pipeline working right. Now, if you block it up or narrow it, you're not going to be doing the best you can be.
What about alcohol? I know a lot of sexual habits happen as a result of drinking in the wrong spot. But is there a long-term detrimental effect of alcohol usage on our sexual health?
Is that for me, or Dr. Fenway? I'll let Dr. Fenway.
So binge. Alcohol seemingly might make you get more in the mood. It decreases your inhibitions. It loosens you up, but for men and penises, it can influence the arousal to penis blood flow pathway. Okay, so something
called whiskey wiener.
Whiskey dick. Oh, it ain't called whiskey wiener. It's called whiskey dick. Whiskey dick. Okay, exactly. And that's when you've done too much, and so now you want to perform, but it's not coming up. It's coming up short. So
that's a bad pun.
And it's not cute either. We're like, oh, really, so
okay.
Moderation is your friend. Moderation is your friend. Whether it does long-term damage, it's possible. It's not as damning as some other bad habits like smoking, you know what I'm saying, and some drug use, illicit drug use. But definitely it's very, whiskey dick is a well-known thing. And again, it's kind of just blocking that pathway from arousal to getting that nerve pathway going to get the blood circulating into the penis.
And alcohol affects every organ system in your body. Chronic alcohol use or chronic binge drinking can lead to dysregulation of the pancreas. Ellis, I don't normally talk in medical terms often, so I'm just going to say this. It can throw your pancreas out of whack, so you can end up with diabetes and or hypertension. And, and you can get a bad reputation if you don't want whiskey dick. That's not.
Don't want that reputation. No. I don't know how to respond to that, but it's real. It's real. So it's definitely a real thing. And so we have to make sure. So I want to, as we're wrapping up here, and I'm glad you were able to join Dr. Griggs, even just for the end of this conversation, because I knew you were going to bring that energy and that level as we were, part of this conversation. And so definitely want to, as we're wrapping up, what is the one thing or two or three things that you want people to know about sexual health, sexual functioning for men in particular, and how they can maintain a healthy sexual functioning throughout their life?
I'll start and let Dr. Millhouse bring it home. Men, guys, we are given a gift. You have a soldier that lets you know about your health every morning. Every morning, that soldier stands up and says, ready to report to work. If your soldier starts to get sluggish, doesn't feel like performing, it feels just dribbling all over the place when you have to go to the bathroom, it could be a sign of prostate issues. It could be a sign of hypertension, diabetes, or mentally you might not be where you're supposed to be. It could be a sign of sleep apnea because you're not sleeping. So pay attention to your soldier and make sure he's ready to work. And when he's ready to work, do everything you can so he can perform. Get checked, get fit, get moving. Dr. Millhouse.
I love it. Add attention. The barometer is down there. And this brings me to I love saying this, what's good for the heart is good for the penis. Okay. And vice versa. What's bad for the heart is bad for the penis. Okay. So if you want to, if nothing else motivates you to get, eat well, to get your body moving, to go see your regular doctor regularly, to stop smoking, to stop using drugs, do it for your dick, okay? Do it for him. In future erections. Yeah. We'll thank you in the future. So
absolutely. Well, we're going to know that. This is do it for your dick. Okay.
Your dick will thank you in the future. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. Yes, it will.
Yep.
So, I want to thank Dr. Jeff, who had to leave a little early, for joining us here, and Dr. Millhouse and Dr. Griggs for coming in and bringing us home for this much needed conversation. And it's always uncomfortable when we start talking about sexual health, because that's something, especially in our, quasi, Christian culture that we want to we don't talk about sex as much as we should. And so it's important to have this conversation because sexual health is part of our overall health. It's just like our mental health is connected, so is our sexual health. And so we have to make sure, because that is really, as we talked about tonight, very connected to our mental health, right? Because it's connected to our self-esteem, our performance anxiety, all of those different things that can come into it. And it can have a problem. It could, as Dr. Grigg said, it could be, it now starts to snowball, You have performance problems and creates anxiety. Anxiety increases performance problems, and then it just goes back and it's circular. It just keeps going around. So make sure you have those conversations with your doctor. Make sure you are, that's the place to be vulnerable, because it's just you and your doctor and having that conversation. So have those conversations and say, hey, doc, I'm not getting an erection in the morning. Hey, doc, I'm having this issue. I'm having that issue. So they can get the ball rolling to where we can overcome those problems and you can start to perform more naturally sexually. So again, thank you all for joining us this program. Thank you all for being part of it. And we look forward to talking to you more in the future. We have another program right at the top of the hour. We're going to be talking about losing that gut, right? So lose that gut. So Dr. Griggs, if you can hang out, I can send you the link for that if you want to jump in that conversation.
I'm there.
You're more than welcome. So I'll send you the link right now.
At least I'm early for something.
We'll get you that conversation about losing that gut. So stick with us here on blackdoctor.org. It's our Men's Health Summit, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.